Hey, there you go. We are recording with Mike McFarthing, and I'm very excited to have you, sir. We were talking about the production quality here, and you were complimenting me on my background that is so neutral.
Absolutely. One of the things I'm saying is when we're really looking for intellectual content, usable information, sometimes a little bit of a busy background, like my Punta Cana one, can be distracting. So good on you for just keeping it neutral. Alex Friedman, one of my favorites, he does that
Yeah,
too, which
yeah.
is great.
Oh man, I'm wondering about Lex Friedman, right? It's he is an interesting individual. Um, it's like I'm not quite sure who he is as a person. He has this persona that he shows to the world. But like in reality, like I'm not sure I can trust it for some reason. Like my gut feeling always like my flags are raising. I'm not sure how to explain that, but
I
it's a
think
whole
I think
different
where that would
topic.
I think where that would come from, and I understand why. Here, I'll give you my 2 cents. I believe that, especially with Joe Rogan being the number one podcaster in the universe, he has a very unique group of individual friends, and he is very much a watcher of content,
Yeah.
not reader of books. And I mean that with the sincerity. If I ever met Joe, I would love him, but he'd be the first one to admit he's not sitting going through books. Okay.
hmm
So
hmm
he relies on the people around him that are very, very learned to say, oh, you should talk to this guy or you should talk to that one. And so what had happened, and I know how this happened, Alex Huberman was friends with his partner who in the supplement gang called On It.
Oh yeah.
And so he said, oh, you should bring this guy on. He's a real academic, but I think you'll love him. So he brought him on. And of course, Alex, being a full research guy and passionate, and I love his podcast too, actually had dealings with Lex and
hmm
Lex and him. But the big connection to Joe Rogan was they both did jiu-jitsu,
Right.
right? So it was like this. It's if you've ever done a sport with friends, I'm a lifetime martial artist. It's like it doesn't matter where you're from in the world. The minute I'm like, oh, you do that, I do that, let's get together. So I think that's kind of what pulled him into the stratosphere. And so it almost seems like he was a plant, if you will. Like, how
hmm
did this guy who's sort of Eastern European academic suddenly have such a following? So I see what you're saying. You
Yeah.
know,
I remember that episode with Joe Rogan when because Lex came onto the podcast like a couple of times before he even started his own podcast, and Joe was really saying like, you should start a podcast. You should start a podcast. And then he started his artificial intelligence podcast. And I was actually a huge fan. I was like loved. My favorite episode of him is when he talked to Balaji Srinivasan for like 7 hours.
hmm
And maybe that's his thing is where I only listen to it not because of him, but because of his guests, right? So, and he allows his guests to talk, and that's what everyone compliments him on is that he's not interrupting anyone. Like I'm interrupting you, for example, right now.
No, 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 you're not. What there's a lesson to be learned, my background being in marketing and sales, is this is what we would call circles of excellence. So if anybody out there wants to punch above their weight, it's not about you being the star, but if you can put yourself in circles of excellence, then people will be like, wow, I don't know who Samir is, but he's talking to Gary V about marketing. Wow, I should listen to this because I love Gary. Now, the
Same,
big
same.
the
I
big
love Gary
trick
too.
though is the
Yeah, yeah.
big trick is most people won't engage beyond a certain level, and that's something a reality everyone has to accept. You don't get to ask Tiger Woods, "Do you want to go play a round of golf?" Like, who are you? Do you know what I
hmm
mean?
hmm
I mean, I'm sure Tiger Woods plays golf with people who are much worse than him, but there's always going to be a reason for it.
Right.
Oh, by the way, Donald Trump would like to play golf with you. Oh, okay. I'll go play golf with him. So
hmm
you may have to have something special in your circle and sell that value to somebody in another circle so that they will engage. But by doing that circles of excellence, you create a chain of value that brings your brand up. So that's really what I'm talking about today is about brand and how you can sell your great idea to other people.
I just wanted to say to Donald Trump's defense, I heard he's a pretty decent golfer, and I feel like he'll be decent with Tiger Woods versus all of his other normie friends.
Yeah. You
I
know,
mean, that's
in terms of the sleeper golfers that you wouldn't really think are really good golfers, Clint Eastwood in his 90s still is a subpar golfer. You're like, what? Yeah, lifetime golfer. There's a few people you don't think play golf that do. So
this is something that I have to learn how to play golf. So far, I'm just doing driving ranges and I'm just like having fun while drinking like a White Claw and just we have one in Toronto here, not far away from downtown. That's like more like Mississauga area. There's like a driving
yes,
range. It's
yeah,
not top
yeah.
golf, but it's still fun. It's like a real field
And
and all.
Scarborough Golf Course is
Scarborough,
still a
yeah,
beautiful golf course. You could get there by the subway. So that's
right,
one of the things for anybody out in Toronto who says, I don't have a car, how am I at a golf course? Go to Scarborough Golf Course. Still a really good links. But
yeah,
to be fair, I was taught this by a Japanese boss of mine. I don't didn't like golf until a few years ago, and he said to me, "How are you going to get 3 hours with somebody?"
right, right.
So it is really the ultimate. You can
It
go
sort
for
of
a
goes back to
run, but
jujitsu,
you're
right?
yeah,
It's
back to
just
the
like,
connection. Make a
yeah.
connection with people on a personal level, and it could lead to business opportunities.
So Mike, let's talk about you, right? Because I didn't do any formal introductions, but I wanted to sort of kind of bring up the point that both of us are at CSGA. And both of us, we know James Castle, and he was on this podcast before as well. And
Oh, fantastic!
yeah, and my first memory about you, I mean, not like the first thing I've like remember about you, but the first thing that comes up is when we were at this conference in Fairmont, I think, or some hotel, right? Just recently, and you played me this clip with from the Crown TV show where Margaret Thatcher is citing this British
Correct.
poet, and basically the whole poem says like if you don't have any enemies, then maybe you weren't even hustling that bad, basically, right?
Well,
And
I think the common statement in that movie was the Queen said, "You're making enemies left and right. Are you, you know, maybe that's not the wisest thing." And Margaret Thatcher, as we know, was a fucking iron lady of politics. Said, "You know, no." And she referenced this poem, which says, "It says you brag that you have no enemies, but I think that means too little of you, for you've never smacked." The cup of a liar out of its hand, nor stood against those people that would do wrong, right? So you're not living to your convictions. So if you have a code and you live to it, you are naturally going to be misaligned with people who don't have a code or have a code that's opposed to you. And you have to be willing to live with that. Because if you want, and this is a great quote, it actually comes from an American satirist who said, if you don't want to be criticized, then be nothing, do nothing, have nothing. No one will criticize you. Okay. So the victim mentality versus a doer mentality. And the best quote I will leave you on this subject is from Winston Churchill, who said, if you stop to throw rocks at every barking dog, you'll never get where you're going. Right. So you're going to have people who don't like you. And here's the one that really kills to the heart. And I only learned this recently. If you cannot take criticism or being hated by the people you're trying to help, then you have no place being a leader. Leaders, unfortunately, are at the top of the hill or the easiest target. And people are being people, have their opinion. You have an opinion, I have an opinion. Unfortunately, if you're doing something, you're going to have people who don't like it. So accept it.
absolutely, and the leaders are the easiest people to gang up on, right? Because you feel
Correct.
protected in the gang in the whole mass, right? But that three things about this, right? First of all, when you showed me that clip, I was like, I instantly clicked with you. I was like, oh my God, he's so excited about this, and I'm excited about this too. Like it's kind of like I felt related to this thing. I was like, wow.
Yes.
Um, Second thing is like I watched The Crown recently, just like I finished it a couple of weeks ago, and what a great show. Honestly, I did not. I thought it's some sort of a girly show that no, like for women, right? Like I was like, okay, cool. Like everyone's watching.
Melodrama, some
My
kind
wife's
of a
watching it. Yeah,
melodrama.
and it's just like, but I started watching it, and it's just like so nicely done, and the storytelling is so great, and there's a historical moment to that, like, and I love, learning in the history and stuff. So great show. And the third one is that Gillian Anderson, who plays Margaret Thatcher, she was just so amazing in this role. I loved that. I loved it. It was very cool. It was my favorite, probably my favorite character after the whole show. Plus the younger Queen. I like that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think relating back to business for a second, why is it even 40 years later? I put a clip up recently about her in the Falkland Island Wars. Why is it we look to leaders like her? Yes, jokes aside, my Scottish relatives who were much in coal mining, when she died, they spent $1 million on her funeral, state funeral. My Scottish uncle said, very, very dry humor, said, for that kind of money, you could have given everybody a shovel and we could have delivered it directly to Satan himself, right? Talking about enemies, right?
That's
He
Scottish for
was
you.
not loved there. But to be fair, she was a strong leader who had her own vision and she stuck to it, regardless of opposition. I'm not saying you should not be open to advice, but once you have decided and done the hard mental work to figure out what you want to do, Samir, or what anyone out there wants to do, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Now, time and circumstance is one thing. Maybe your timing is wrong. Maybe the opportunity is wrong for you, and maybe you don't realize that until you're in it. But I tell you, too many people have quit 3 feet from success. I'm sure you know the story of the gentleman in the Yukon Gold Rush that sold his property after his claim wore out, and he was basically 3 feet from finding the gold,
Right.
sold it, and left. Only good story about that is the guy's name was Are you Fulling? I think his name was. I could be corrected on that, but he realized after his mistake he went into insurance and he became one of the richest insurance brokers in America in the early centuries. Why? Because he said, I will not stop because I did it before and I failed to realize that if I just gone a little further, I would have been rich. So now I encourage everyone, don't take counsel from others when you have a vision. You know, one of the beautiful words in French that comes into English is the word desire. So if you think about the word desire in French, it's désir, which means of the Father. So if you have any sense of God or divine, you must understand you do not have a passion for something from nowhere. I believe it comes almost like a muse, as the Greeks would say, a inspiration, and it's given to you as a gift. So don't let anyone kill your gift. So coming to the very first lesson I would give everybody is before you deal with other people's objections, you should clearly understand what you believe, lest you be swayed by somebody else's objection. You should really figure it out and think about every objection that possibly could be fired at you and I'm not to go into argument because the first thing we're going to talk about how to deal with objections is not fighting. If you fight with somebody, you lose their connection. Biblically, it says, can anyone lead if someone not follow? You have to have yourself alongside the person. You have to have tactical empathy, walking alongside another person so they understand that you understand them. Okay? Does that make sense, Samir?
You know,
If I tell you you're wrong, you don't like me. That's it.
in the leadership positions, I find myself lately in the state of mind where it's you either lead, you follow, or you stay out of the way. And basically, my main problem usually is that the naysayers are, they can spread negativity to the rest of the team, basically
Mhm.
by expressing doubt in public and all of that, and but at the same time not taking any action to show initiative and leadership, and that's a lot of the time like that's what I'm dealing with as well is that I need to make sure that the team stays together and everyone's motivated, and if there is a naysayer, there needs to be some sort of a conversation that underlines that hey, like if you're not offering solutions, there's no need for your negativity. There's no need for your like, especially in public. I feel what I'm trying to say here is like the team morale is very important, and how you communicate publicly with leadership needs to be supplemented with solutions. And it's like the classic "don't bring me problems, don't bring me solutions." But that's kind of like the fast-paced environment that like we're operating in. And it's like, okay, you have something you want to say, okay, cool. What do we do about it, right? Because I don't have time to solve your problems.
Yes, I agree. So I think we have to make a distinction here. How can I put it this way? A distinction between mission and motivation. And I think Elon Musk said it best. If I have to motivate you, you don't belong here. Okay. So
Exactly.
unfortunately, In the real world, people are motivated by money mostly,
True.
and they go to work with a passion, but it's also to pay their bills. So we have to always recognize that if we are motivated by that desire or that mission, and I know you are, Samir, and I am too, and so is James, where we're not quitting. It doesn't matter if the money isn't here right now. We're sticking to the truth of the commitment of our vision. The others that follow may not have as big a desire for the same thing. They're aligned, yes, but they want to get paid. And we can't not acknowledge that. But when we create games where we don't make the rules meet the requirements, then we have a problem. So the way I deal, first of all, dealing with the objection of people being negative in a group is I have to do one of two things. I have to use questions to determine one of two things. Are you putting holes in the boat because you are not captain? There are some people, egotistically speaking, that if they cannot be captain of the ship, they're going to sabotage the ship, put holes in it to make it sink because they're not captain, right? So you have to identify those toxic people and you have to remove them. Now, if we have people just for honestly looking at the metaphor of a ship, they just don't like rowing the boat and they would rather be steering it, and you've hired them to row the boat, you need to make it clear to them that your job is rowing. Okay. If you aspire to steering, then you need to row with such ferocity that you're the best rower and lead and train people to take your place to row, right? So you become a mentor to people below you, and then we will elevate you to the opportunity to steer the boat. So patience is required. Now, one of my powerful tools, and it's not mine, I got it from Chris Voss, the former FBI negotiator guy from Never Split the Difference. He says this: ask the question, the tactical question. So, how does that look? Or how does that work? So, somebody comes with an objection and goes, oh, I think we should go left instead of right. Okay, how does that work? Here's a map. How does that work? And then forcing them to create the solution that they say that they want. If they can create it, then and you really humble in your own self as sort of a servant leader, and it makes no loss of time, then you can say, fine, we will go left instead of right. But if they can't create a solution, when you go, how does this look? Show me what your plan is. You identified something that's good. You should be volunteering to solve this. And they won't step up, they won't volunteer. Then you really respectfully have to say to them, well, that's a wish, not a plan. And we have a plan, so we're going to stick to the plan. And it's not easy because what you just said, Samir, is the core issue of all business. And this is why I wrote a book on objections, is because at the end of the day, people are your greatest strength and your greatest objection. You know, if everybody agreed with you, what a wonderful life you would have, eh, Samir?
Right.
If your parents believed everything you told them and they said, honey, we support you completely. This is fantastic. Don't work for a big corporation, work for yourself. Did you have this experience? I may ask, not to put you on the spot. Did your
Well,
family, what did they
yeah.
say?
Well, to be honest with you, my only thing that my parents were really strict about is just me finishing school at that particular major, which was economics and accounting. So like I was doing poorly, and I was ready to give up. And I was like, hey, I can take anthropology or social studies or some other major that is kind of like a BS type of humanitarian where you just need to write an essay. And my father just flipped. He's like, no way, I'm paying for for something like that. So you either,
Correct.
do it or die, basically. And so I did it. I've it was like one of the greatest achievements I ever had is actually, because I went to like
Congratulations.
a strong school and I had to compete with a lot of people, but surprisingly I did it. But other than that, actually, like education was the one thing that was very strict in my family. Everything professionally and career-wise, I've kind of was able to persuade what I wanted to do, and I didn't meet a lot of objections from my family. So that was actually pretty great, and
Mhm,
that's great that you mentioned that because I never thought of that of other people, right? For like the prejudice and because I've switched from accounting to affiliate marketing and customer acquisition. And
mhm.
then I also started a podcast like a long time ago, which was really right now it's like fashionable, especially with COVID and all of that. But I started it in 2019, this one, and the one before they don't even know that I started it. Um, and so there was like a bit of like a mystery, like what the hell is he doing? Like, what is this weird stuff? But there was never some sort of like a you're a joke or what are you up to? Like it's not serious, focus on something that's real. So yeah, I gotta give them props for that.
I mean, and I give you a story. It's not my story, but it's Dave Chappelle's story. The great comedian Dave Chappelle. He tells the story. Both his parents were teachers. I know he jokingly makes a joke about I let people think that I was from the hood because it helped me, but no, he's from middle class, and his parents are both teachers.
I had
And
no
believe
clue,
it
by
or
the way.
not, he sorry.
I had no clue. That's the news for me.
He made me laugh about it. He goes, he says, the streets embraced me. And he took a cigarette. He goes, and I let them. But the reality was, he came from middle class. He was quite a good student, and his parents aspired for him to become a teacher as well. And he even started to look at going to teachers college, and then he realized, no, I want to be a comedian. And he'd been doing it since he was about 15 or 16. Now, as a parent, and I can tell you this to be true, we will indulge our children's dream of being oh, you want to be an astronaut when you're 5? Great. When you're 20 and you say you want to be an astronaut, that's when the worries start coming. Because I think everybody who loves you, wife, mother, father, brother, sister, they don't mean to destroy you and your dream. But unfortunately, their frame of reference is they've known you so long. So they knew the Samir who dressed funny or tried to break dance. I'm a white kid. I tried break dancing. Horrible idea. But they remember all of these missteps. Where you decided you were going to be a chess master and you quit after 2 months, or you took up martial arts and you quit. They know you. They know that backstory. So when you actually come to a moment as sort of early adult and say, "This is my future," they go, "Uh huh, this is just another phase." And when it isn't, they start to panic because they feel like, what is the chance of you being the one that makes it? So Dave Chappelle's father took him aside after one of his sets and said, "Son, what the hell are you doing?" And he said to his dad, he said, "Dad, I may never become famous and big, but if I can make the same income that a teacher makes doing the thing I love, then I will be successful." And his father had a reframe. See, that's one of the powers of we will talk about objection dealing is frame control. He controlled his frame. And what I mean by frame is when you dance, if you've ever done ballroom dancing or anything,
Oh yeah.
the dancers cannot continuously move in and out to one another because it makes the coordination very poor. They must hold, like a frame of a picture, their position between each other so that they move as one piece. This is called frame control. So in business, frame or psychology, they use that concept. Somebody's frame is going to be maintained and somebody else's frame is going to be broken. His father's frame was, son, you can't be one of the greatest, which he did become, but you probably not. Looking statistically, the chances of you becoming a top comedian is so small, and I love you and I don't want you to suffer. Please don't do it. He reframed or broke his father's frame by saying, Dad, I don't need to be there. I need to be the same income of the job that you told me to take, which at the time was about $40,000. And his father was like, huh, frame broken.
Right.
Huh.
It's funny because I feel like my parents' frame was as long as you don't have to support you, I feel like you're free to do whatever you want. That
Correct.
was the frame.
Correct. And we've given him the tools such that even if he doesn't like it, even if his lip is on the floor, we'll probably get an accounting job or a middle administrative job in a big company and earn a decent income. Correct?
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
my parents did this to me. My sister was an actress. She was a rather successful actress on stage. She then married a very wealthy man. So that kind of worked out for her. But I went to see one of her plays when she was about 18 and I was 15 going on 16. And it was Guys and Dolls. So if you don't know the play Guys and Dolls, it's a bunch of very beautiful long legged ladies in shorts, because like cabaret.
Hmm.
So being a good straight guy, I was like, holy crap, this is like a cheat code. It's like 50 hot girls here. So we were in the car going home and I saw these girls and I went to just mused out loud, just said out loud, oh, I think I'd like to do acting. And my sister's in the back and my mom's driving. And my mom slammed the brakes. And she was Scottish. And she says, there's one actor in this car, and it isn't you. And my sister and I said, whoa, 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 whoa. What are you talking about? Why can't he act? She goes, a woman can marry well, which my sister did. A man has to make money. So that was my
It
mom
makes
saying.
sense.
So there was no acting for Mike.
Well,
So
it made sense for you, I guess, too, right? You kind of maybe reframed your position, or were you disagreeing with that when she said it?
at that time, I was 15 and I was just looking at the hot
Okay.
legs and thinking, he's cutting me off from this opportunity. Um, Later on, I went into public speaking and other politics and other things where I could express my creativity. But um, I think within the book, I would just like to delve into a few stories that might illustrate to the
And
listeners.
exactly. Before that, I was since we have only like 12 minutes left, I wanted to talk to you about the book and the framing that you're mentioning. It's called 101 Objections and How to Overcome Them. Um, and it's written by you, and I just want to say that this is a great book, and I like the style that you wrote it in. It's a very bulleted kind of guide,
Yeah,
and I love it. And I feel like this is where, all the you trimmed all the BS that usual publishers do, and you bunch of like you have to like put a bunch of like personal stories to make it thick or something like that. And I really love that it's just literally tells you all the rules, and it reminds me of this Twitter meme right now called "Sun." Like when you grow up, you have to read this or something. It's like a self-help book for your children or something like that, and I love that. It's kind of like
yeah,
before you leave the nest, like read this stuff. That's gonna be your Bible or something like that. So
correct.
so I love this, and you do put a lot of accent on framing and questioning questions. How do you pose the question for each subject, and I love that a lot as well. So please tell me more about this book. How did you
Well,
come to
I'll
write it? And yeah.
explain my background. I'm oil and gas, mining, industrial sales guy. Studied not just marketing but sales at a very high level, and the 10,000 hour rule, more than 20, 30,000 hours of negotiating, selling, and whatnot. And I had a lot of friends who were inventors. And what I came across was they were passionate about their inventions. They're really knowledgeable about their inventions, but they had a horrible time either getting their wives to agree to spend money out of their own pockets, or getting their family to believe in their vision, or getting an investor. And I was like, talk to them, and I'd be like, well, what's going on here? And I only analogy why I got involved. And I mean, like almost 15 years as an inventing coach. I'm a part of a director of an inventor group here in Toronto called Inventor Circle. And I'm also on the International Award Committee for ICANN, which is on its 10th year of giving awards to inventors globally. Was people, for analogy, would be pushing on a door with all of their might. And I go, Jesus, are you oh, bro, you don't know how tired I am. I've been pushing on this door for years. My arm is so sore, my back is sore. And I'd look up and I'd read the sign above the door and it'd say pull. And I go, could you just stop for a second and just go to the side? And I'd take two fingers and I'd open the door. And they would look at me like, holy shit. And I was, well, what was going on here was they were not dealing with the objections or the needs of an investor, right? So if I come with a rock and I paint a face on it, I go, this is my invention. People go, that's a rock with a face on it. Yeah, I sold $72 million worth of rocks through the email. My profit margin's 50%, and I'm willing to give you 25% of that 50% if you help fund it. I'll get you an investor all day, every day, right? This is where inventors miss the boat. You could invent a cure for cancer. But if it bumps against people who already have it, others, cures for cancer, they're going to crush you. You need to figure out first of all, the market you're going into. Can you compete? How are you going to compete? The frame control. But also, when you come to investors and your family, and I'm just going to, because we have very short time, we have two stories, two different scenarios. Scenario number one is an inventor. His wife's very supportive. She loves him. He's patented a couple of inventions. He now decides we should go all in and start making an invention. And he goes to his wife and says, "We're going to do a remortgage on the house, and we're going to do this." She freaks out and says, "I'm divorcing you." And she's been the most supportive wife for almost 15 years. He doesn't even know what's going on. He's freaking out. He calls me. So we go and we meet with her and we talk to her. I'm not going to use names, but let's just call her Sam for easy. So I go, Sam, what's going on here? She goes, it's just not right. It's just this thing. So through process of questioning, I started to ask her about her childhood. What was your dad like? What did your dad do? And then it came out, she says, my dad had such a great job. And then one day he decided to go into business for himself and he had a bad business partner. And then we took our life savings and we put it into the business and it completely failed. And that was why I couldn't go to college. And so she had unpacked frame self employment equals death.
Right.
Okay. That was her frame. Now, once her husband, let's call him Dan, understood that that was her frame, we were able then, through a process of questioning, go, well, does he love you? Yes. Would he risk everything on turn of pitch and toss like your dad did? Is he giving up his day job? No. What is paying the bills? His job, right?
Right.
Would you be willing to take a second-hand mortgage on your house to do a renovation? She said, "Oh, absolutely." So
Hmm.
it's not the money. You've connected this as being a dragon that's going to eat your whole house, burn your house down.
It was a
So once
trigger.
it was a trigger, exactly. So once we reframed it, she was on board, and I have to say, I got him on Dragon's Den, and his
Wow.
product actually is called the drywall hammer. It was a hammer tape measure combination. Um, he didn't get a deal with the dragon that was supposed to do it was Arlene Dickinson. But we went to Rona, we got into Rona, and he sold 1.5 million of them.
That's crazy.
So
What
there
a
we go.
story. What
So
a
there's an
story.
example.
It's
Now
it's
I
fu-
had another. Say
yes. Yes, please go on. We have five
then
minutes, but I wanted
okay,
to
okay.
just
There's
yeah.
there's another example. I had these two Russian investors from New York, and the only reason I bring up they're Russian is if you understand anything about Russian Jewish New Yorker, then you know everything you need to know, which is they sell diamonds and they're as hard as diamonds. Okay? Do you come from former Soviet Union? No flim flam, no heartfeltness is going to sway them. They're here to make money. They give money to people. As a matter of fact, Kevin O'Leary uses a line from one of former guys that I know where he got the line from. He got it from one of the guys that I know, and that was, "My money is like soldiers. I send them out to win wars and bring back prisoners, not to go out and die." So if I give you money, the money goes out to capture enemy and bring back. Okay, so it must be for sure we're going to win this war. No iffy wiffy wars. Okay, so we'll give these gentlemen's names, Alexei and Nikolai. They're two brothers. Alexei is the older brother, Nikolai's younger brother. Um, I knew them. I had brought other inventors to them to try and get money. They're great seed capital guys in New York. So we go to Bensonhurst, which is an enclave in New York City, to go see them. My inventor at the time is a former um, uh, paramedic from the Canadian military, and he had this amazing invention, which was a syringe that you put pieces of cotton wool in. And when you have a gunshot wound, you push it in and press it. They all go into the wound. And each one of them has a reflective tag. So you can see it on an x ray.
Mm,
Okay. Spoiler alert, this invention went to market and it made a couple of $1 million.
wow.
But at the time, we couldn't get any money in Canada, even though the Canadian forces wanted to try it. We needed a medical contract and we needed clinical trials and blah, blah, blah. We needed money. So this guy was all in. The inventor was all in. And let's just call him Rob for sake here. Rob was amazing. And we were preparing for the frame control because I said, I know these guys are going to attack his frame, try to smash him down to get a lower price, even if they like the thing. And I looked at him and he was wearing a Rolex. And he's only 26. He had a Rolex on. I went, pretty nice watch. I said, hey, bro, you say you're all in, but you're wearing a Rolex. And he goes, oh, this one. He took it off and he went, actually, my best friend who died in my arms in Afghanistan, his parents had given him as a graduation gift. And they gave it to me because I was the last person with him and he was his best friend. When I heard that, I went, holy shit. I said, you're wearing that watch and you're going to wave your hand around when you start doing your presentation. He goes, why? He says, when they going to attack it to break your frame, you're going to tell them the story. So we got in there, classic. They weren't even in the office. They were making us wait 20 minutes, another frame control maneuver. Then it came to a situation where Alexei came in and walked out. He said, oh, talk to Nikolai. I'm too busy. Brought out all the paperwork. We're doing the presentation. We hadn't even been in the presentation more than 3 minutes when Nikolai led, hey, nice watch. And when I heard that, I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
they
he
got the
goes,
bait.
yeah. He says, how much is that watch? He goes, it's a real Rolex. He goes, yes, it is. He says, wow. He says, that's about a $18,000 watch. He goes, no, it's actually a $22,000 watch. So the guy goes, crosses his arm and goes, you say you're all in. He goes, well, I have to tell you the story. He
Right.
told the story about being outside the thing and him being sniped, showed the watch. He saw the thing. I saw him go like this. He called his brother in. They had a little conversation in Russian. He comes over and he goes, tell me the story. Didn't even want to hear about the product. Tell me the story. With the story, they said, how much money do you need? And we said, $50,000. Okay.
Done.
They wrote the check. Now we're leaving. Now we're leaving. And now the brain is starting to kick in a little bit. They're very chess guys.
Yeah. Mike, and
And
I just wanted to unfortunately interrupt you. This is a great story to finish our podcast on because we literally have 50 seconds left before we get
oh,
automatically
okay.
disconnected.
So suffice it to say, he turned to me and he says, you bastard. He says, you knew about the watch. And I said, of course I did, because I knew how to deal with your frame control and your thing. I really appreciate, Samir, your time.
Mike, thanks so much
Your
to you as
podcast
well.
is going to go on for strength to strength. And anybody wants any advice on how to raise money or something, just give me a call. I'm happy to dialogue with you.
And I'll add all the description and the podcast notes. And thanks so much, Mike, for being on the podcast. It was a true pleasure talking to you. Hopefully, not the last time because you're such a great storyteller. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you much. Take care.
Right,
Bye-bye.
take care. Bye bye.
Bye.